What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with a Star Wars comic book market update. And I've got the thumbnail up here because I wanted to talk about the concept of a dead cat bounce. And for those of you that follow the stock market, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the premise of this video is that, in my opinion, the Book of Boba Fett is rather lackluster. Okay, it's not that great. And the question is, we've had the Black Krrsantan show up in the show, and that's driven prices for a lot of different first appearance books really high over the last couple of weeks. And my question is, as we've talked about in some other videos, like my Boba Fett tax video, given the fact that the show's probably not going to end up resonating with the mainstream audience unless things turn around very quickly. I mean, we're 4 episodes in at this point, so I feel like there's enough data there to kind of assess the series so far. And maybe things do turn around and it gets a little better, but I think other than hardcore Star Wars fans, I don't expect the Book of Boba Fett to have a kind of crossover into mainstream appeal the way the Mandalorian did. And assuming that's the case, is the recent run-up in Star Wars comic books, I mean, we're seeing massive run-ups, 200, 300% run-ups for some, like the first appearance of Black Krrsantan. We've seen 50 to 60%, if not more, run-ups for Dr. Aphra related comics. Some of them have doubled in value. And my question is, are those prices going to come back down to earth? And the concept of a dead cat bounce is right here in the lower right-hand corner. And that's when the stock market is going down, and then all of a sudden it bounces up really quickly. And then it stays up for just a little while, but then it goes down to the same level or lower than what it was before the initial rally. And what that means is, you know, even a dead cat will bounce if you drop it from high enough, right? And so that's what this graphic is depicting. And it's an old expression within the stock market that you know, a dead cat bounce is one where you want to be careful, because if you start seeing a run up in prices with Star Wars comics, is that here to stay as we kind of get into 2022 and some of the other shows that are coming, or are we going to have another drop? And we did see a pretty major drop in the back half of the year before the hype started for the Book of Boba Fett. August, September, October, I talked about it in several videos, and I said now's the time to buy comics for Star Wars because the prices are very inexpensive, and they were. And I've made the decision to pick up a lot of key books that I wanted, and some of those have doubled in price. I mean, it's just crazy what they've done since the Book of Boba Fett has been released. But the question is this recent run-up gonna end up deflating again? And I think the possibility is there that we're gonna see a drop in prices. Let's look at some of the key issues that have jumped since the Book of Boba Fett episodes have come up. The first one, obviously, is Darth Vader #1, and that is the first appearance of Black Krrsantan. And, you know, there are like 30 different covers for Darth Vader #1. And one of the more expensive ones is this one. This is one that I highlighted, and I said, hey, you might want to consider this one. And I was considering it back when it was about $200. Now this one just sold for $525. Another one sold for $475. That was a few days earlier. So, you know, that's the 1 in 50 ratio variant. So there's, for every 50 of the normal cover, which we'll go over in a second, only one of these was printed. And you know, I know it's a 1 in 50, I get that, but and it is an awesome cover. It's an epic cover. But I bet that we'll see that once the Book of Boba Fett is over and done with, who knows what happens with Black Krrsantan, but let's say, you know, he doesn't die or anything crazy like that, which I don't expect him to. But I think once the show is over with, you know, a couple of months, 2-3 months down the line, I bet this book gets cut in half. I bet this is back down to 200 to 250. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think that if you got this book and you bought it for speculation purposes, you want to unload it sooner rather than later. I don't think it's worth $525. I'm sorry, it's a 1 in 50. I know that, but to pay that kind of money for basically an enforcer / gladiator / Wookiee that growls and throws people around in fight scenes. Yes, he's awesome looking. I love him. I think he's really cool, and I hope the vintage collection comes out with one. But he's not a $525 first appearance comic, in my opinion. There's much better ways to spend your money. So if you got that book and you're thinking about selling it, I would sell it now. I don't think it's worth that kind of money. The regular cover is this one. There was 4 or 5 different printings for this one. This is the first printing. of Darth Vader #1, the standard cover. That one sold for $405 on January 18th, 2 days ago, as of the filming of this video. $405 is insanity for this book. There's over 1,000 9.8s on the census right now. I didn't pull up the census, but for the first printing of this book, there are dozens and dozens of these, hundreds of them. And I would never pay anywhere close to $405. I bet this one gets cut in half or more. I bet this is more like $150 to $175 in 3 months' time. Here's the fifth printing. The fifth printing goes for quite a bit of money, because now this I can understand a little bit, that I do think that this one is worth more than the first printing or any of the other printings, because if you look at the census for this one, the fifth print of Darth Vader #1, this one makes a little more sense because there's a lot less of these out there. The print numbers are not there, and they all have different backgrounds. This one's got the yellow background, but even $360, I mean, that's just a really large number. This is the third print with the green background. That one sold for $246.50 2 days ago. And then we got the second print, which is like an orangish red background. That one sold for $235. So if you want to get the book and you're going to have it in your collection long term, by all means, go ahead and get it. Because I do think that Black Krrsantan, if Dr. Aphra has her own show, for example, Black Krrsantan's going to make an appearance there, because they're tied at the hip in a lot of her comics. And we're going to go through some of her comics here in a little while. But I just don't think that these prices are sustainable. I think that we're going to see a massive drop in his first appearance comic once the Book of Boba Fett is come and gone, because that show is not going to resonate with the mainstream. And that's what usually drives long-term value creation for a lot of these first appearance comics. Does it cross over into the mainstream appeal? And the Book of Boba Fett's not going to do that, in my opinion. It's just not going to do that. It's the hardcore fan only, and even the hardcore fans like me are left wanting by the kind of mediocre nature of it. But let's talk about now Dr. Aphra. Her first appearance was in Darth Vader #3, which is from that same series, that same volume of Darth Vader. That volume has a lot of awesome books in it for Darth Vader. But Darth Vader #3, this is the 1 in 25 La Rocca variant, the variant edition. It's the first appearance of Dr. Chelly Aphra, 000, and BT1, as you see in the upper right. An epic cover, and this has proven staying value, staying power, but it's expensive. It's really expensive. Now, the interesting thing is, since Black Krrsantan has made his appearance, this book has not really gone up that much. This one sold for $2,300, and that's about what it was going for prior to the Book of Boba Fett. So this one hasn't moved all that much. A lot of it's because, there's probably a smaller buyer pool, right? There's not that many buyers that can afford a $2,300 modern comic book. But so I do think, though, that this one will hold its value. This is kind of the blue chip. If you're going to speculate on anything, or if you want to invest in anything Dr. Aphra related, this is the one to get. I'd love to have it. I don't think I'll ever get it, just because it's just so pricey. That's an expensive book. If I spend that kind of money, I'm getting Clone Wars #1, or I'm going to save up and get Star Wars #42 from the original Marvel vintage run to get Boba Fett's first appearance. I'm not spending $2,300 on a more speculative Dr. Aphra book, but it's a beautiful book. Don't get me wrong. I would love to have it in my collection, but I think for that kind of price, I'd rather have Clone Wars #1. But here's the standard cover. This is the one I do have, and I've got a number of data points here for you. This one has moved up quite a bit. Before the Book of Boba Fett, this was going for about $350, which is actually less than what I paid. I paid about $400 for mine, and as I talked about, it was at $350 or so, and it was kind of at a low point prior to the Book of Boba Fett. Let's call it August through October time frame. That's when the low was for Star Wars books in a 9.8. This one has jumped up to $580. I want to preface this. I've seen this book sell as high as $700. $700 for a first print Darth Vader #3, the standard cover. I mean, that's crazy. It's gone from $350 to $700 overnight just because Black Krrsantan showed up. But more normally, it's, here's one that's $580. This one sold for $562.90 on January 16th, 39 bids. So that was in an auction. This one also was in an auction same day, $553 was what that one sold for. Also on January 16th on 45 bids, $537. And then this one also on January 16th, $526. So, $562, $553, $537, $526. That gives you a rough price range. So $500 to $550 for Darth Vader #3. As much as I love this book, I preach patience on this one as well, because I think this one will come back into the force pretty easily. There's so many of these on the 9.8 in the 9.8 grade on the census. It's like over 1,000, and I just think that there's so many people holding on to like 10 of these things, and as soon as there's any kind of movement with Dr. Aphra, they're all throwing them up on eBay. I mean, it's crazy. There were dozens and dozens for sale on eBay, and I just think you need to be careful with this. And I bought it because I like Dr. Aphra. I think Dr. Aphra long term is a great buy. But if you're buying this for like a very short term hold, me personally, I wouldn't pay any more than about $400 for this book right now until we have some more concrete Dr. Aphra news. But it's an awesome book, and I love it. Now, one of the more expensive ones is the third print. The third print has also gone up a little bit. It was about $380 prior to the Book of Boba Fett. Now it sells for $504. This one sold at 34 bids on January 10th. It's got the green background, third printing. There's also a fourth printing that's even more rare. That one's very expensive as well. $800 to $1,000 is the last data points I've seen for that one. That's one I wouldn't mind having that one, because the census numbers are so much lower than the first print. Now, I want to talk about Dr. Aphra #1. This is the first solo edition of her comics, right? So Dr. Aphra got her own comics. This is the first solo book. Those tend to mirror what the first appearance comics do, and I think this is a good buy. Not at this price point, but this typically has been between $100 and $150. It's only moved up to about $200, so it's not terrible. I think that this is probably a pretty safe buy, in my opinion, because it's got Black Krrsantan on the cover. It's got the murder droids. It's her first solo comic, and it's a lot less expensive of a risk, in my opinion. This is one I don't have in my collection, but I'd like to get it. And there's a number of different variant covers for this as well, so you got to be careful there. But not particularly difficult to find. And I think if you're patient after the Book of Boba Fett ends, you'll get this one for under, I'd say $150 all day long. So, but I actually like this one a lot. I think this is a much better investment than this one, which is Darth Vader #4, which is Dr. Aphra's second comic book appearance. So this came after her first appearance in Darth Vader #3. This one sold for $176. This is the little bit more rare second print, so I can understand that price point. But to me, if it comes down to paying $176 for the second print of her second appearance, or to get her first solo comic with Black Krrsantan and the murder droids on the cover, I'm taking this one all day long. I'd much rather have this one for slightly more money. But I think both of these books will be under $150 in a few months' time. But they're both worth having. Don't get me wrong, but this is a much more eye-appealing cover. And if I'm going to get a graded book, I'd much rather have that one than Darth Vader #4. Now let's go back to other books that people seem to be speculating on for the Book of Boba Fett. One of those is Star Wars #50, and one that I'd mentioned as being a pretty good buy. And this was a newsstand edition of Star Wars #50 from the original vintage run. This came out in August of 1981. It's an epic cover. Newsstand, as you can see there, it's got the UPC code in the lower left-hand corner. That one is IG-88's first full comic book appearance. So a lot of people are speculating that he might show up. That book has been consistently selling for $300 to $350. This one was $350, best offer accepted. But I still think that's a good book to have no matter what. I don't care what happens in Book of Boba Fett. I just think it's an awesome cover, and you can't go wrong with that one, in my opinion. I just think it's a good book. The other big one that everyone is speculating on, and that's Bossk. Obviously, this is a book we've talked about in the past, but Star Wars #71 is Bossk's first full comic book appearance. That one has been steadily climbing. It jumped up to about $450 in a direct edition too, but it's come back down a little bit. It's kind of in the $350 to $375 range lately. This one just sold for $370, best free shipping. This one had a miswrap, as you can see. It's got a pretty heavy white line there on the left-hand side, so it's a little bit of an overwrap on that book. But I think $325 to $350 is about fair for that book, and it's a nice cover as well. It doesn't have Bossk on the cover, but I think that's a good book to have long term. I don't think you can go wrong with that one either. Obviously, there's talk that we're going to see Han Solo towards the end of the Book of Boba Fett. He apparently did wrap up some filming. It's the worst kept secret among Star Wars news, is that he's going to make an appearance in the Book of Boba Fett at the end. So that'll probably make this book go up even further, is my guess, since that covers his. There'll probably be a reference in the Book of Boba Fett to Han Solo when he was in Carbonite and all that good stuff, and how Boba delivered him to Jabba. I bet all of that stuff will get covered in the Book of Boba Fett, if indeed Han Solo does make an appearance. But that'll probably drive this book up a little bit further, but I don't know if it's too much more valuable really than where it is right now. 300 to 350 seems pretty fair for a fairly minor first appearance with Bosk. The quest for Han Solo. So, I don't know. It's could it go higher? Yes, but I think that's just kind of a nice long-term book to hold in your collection if you're a Star Wars fan. I wouldn't buy that particularly for the future price appreciation. Okay, now this is one. Now we're going to start getting into books where I do think it makes sense to try and find them if you can. This is one I bid on. This is Solo, a Star Wars story, the comic book adaptation of the movie. This is Qi'ra's first appearance. Qi'ra obviously is the female lead in that movie. Emilia Clarke is the actress. She has since signed on for a new Star Wars series where she's going to reprise her role as Qi'ra. And this is a book I bid on. This one sold January 9th, and I went hard at it. And I lost, unfortunately. I was the second lowest bidder. But it was around 270, 280 as the auction was closing. I bid 405 or 404, something like that. Someone outbid me at the end. I think this book is going to continue to go up because Emilia Clarke, again, is coming to a new Star Wars series on Disney, reprising her role as Qi'ra, and I think this is absolutely a book to get. The other key thing to remember is this book is really hard to find in a 9.8. There's only 19 of these on the CGC census right now in a 9.8. So I saw those stats. I was like, I need to bid on this, and I did. I went really hard at it, but I couldn't get it. So I lost out, and so I as my backup plan, I went with Rogue One, adaptation number 1, which I'm sure I'll show in a video, and I'm the comic video here soon. But I did pick up that one in a 9.8 for about half that price. I got it for about $200. So because I think Andor, as I've talked about, I think Andor is going to be a really good series. There's a sizzle reel that's out there on YouTube. You can look it up. But the Andor series, they are going like very genuine. It's going to be gritty. It's going to be kind of more in keeping with the Rogue One vibe, which was an awesome movie, And I think that series is not going to make the same mistakes that the Book of Boba Fett made. I think they're going to look at how the Book of Boba Fett was received by fans and by the mainstream audience, and they're going to try and maybe go a little bit more gritty with it. I hope. With kind of some sprinkling of humor, the way Rogue One was with K2SO. But so I went ahead and got Rogue One issue number 1, the adaptation, which is the first comic book appearance of Andor and K2SO. I went ahead and picked that up for about $200 in a 9.8 grade. And I wish I could have gotten this one, but that was kind of my fallback. So I'm excited about that. But if you see this one for sale for kind of 400 and under, I think that's a fair price, honestly. That book's going to continue to go up, in my opinion. Here's another one that I don't know if we talked about in detail, but this is Darth Vader number 13. This is the first appearance of the 10th brother, which is another member of the Inquisitorius. This one sold for $100. All day long, I'd pay that. All day long. I actually had it on my watch list. I just didn't pull the trigger on it, but I'd pay that all day long because I think the 10th brother has a good chance of making an appearance, since we've already seen some concept art for the Obi-Wan series that the Inquisitorius are going to make an appearance. So the other ones I'd really recommend are any of the Kanan the Last Padawan books. They've stayed relatively flat. They haven't gone up dramatically with the Book of Boba Fett, obviously because it's really going to be tied to the Ahsoka series. So I still think that the Ahsoka series, any run up in those books, it hasn't really happened yet. So you can probably pick up a lot of the Kanan the Last Padawan books. The keys are really number 1, number 6. You could make an argument for number 12. Which is the Grand Inquisitor's first cameo. So any of those books are good. This is, I believe, the 1 in 10 Rebels variant. I think it's 1 in 10. That one sold for $317 here on January 16th. I think that was a good buy. The second print of Kanan number 1 is a good one to get. It's got a black cover. Very, very difficult to get that in 9.8. First appearance of Kanan Jarrus. This is the revised label, the correct label. And I think that's a good one to get. That one sold for $390. I was very tempted to bid on that, but I didn't pull the trigger. But I think $390 is a good price to pay for that second printing. For the first printing, I'd probably pay $300 or less. Now this is a good one as it relates to the Ahsoka. Now this is one I'm telling you this as a cautionary tale. Even CGC made a mistake on this one. This is the comic, the Dark Horse comic 2-pack reprint of Heir to the Empire #1, which is Grand Admiral Thrawn's first appearance. You can see it's got that #1 in the upper right-hand corner. This is the reprint, and credit to the seller for admitting that. It's mislabeled. It's mislabeled as it says here. Now that one sold for $835, which is about right for a 9.8 for that book. But you got to be really careful because this one was mislabeled as a newsstand edition, and I don't know what CGC was doing on that label. But that's about right for the reprint, for the comic 2-pack reprint. And credit to the seller for showing the key comic collector site for that book. And wow, I mean, that's a big mistake though by CGC to say it's Heir to the Empire #1, the newsstand edition. That's like a $5,000 book. So it's definitely not that. This is the Dark Horse Comics reprint, but that's out there, and I think that's a good buy. I think that's, if you don't want to spend the money on the original of Heir to the Empire #1, which now is running for about $1,800. It's gone up about 30% since I bought mine, but $835 for that comic 2-pack version is a good price. That's a good price to pay for that one. Another one, I don't know if this is necessarily tied to any Disney Plus content, but this is one I really like. This is the first appearance of Savage Opress. This is the Free Comic Book Day Star Wars The Clone Wars from 2011. Epic cover, dark cover, and that's one I'd pay all day. That one, $330. That was January 16th. That's a good price to pay for that one. $350 after shipping. Really nice cover though. I like that one a lot. I don't know if it's really going to do anything, but I think it's a good comic to have for your collection. Okay, now one kind of concept we talk about in a lot of my updates for the Star Wars comics is first appearance in Marvel continuity. And we talk about Mace Windu #5, which is the first appearance of Ahsoka Tano. There is a panel within Darth Vader #14 from 2017 where Ahsoka shows up. And that has driven this book to insanity. This was like $75 book in a 9.8 like a month ago. And as soon as someone pointed out that, hey, this has got this got a panel of Ahsoka in that one. That one just sold for $170 on January 17th. I mean, it's over double, 2.5 times from a month ago. And it's a pretty cool cover. It shows Vader kind of in a bath. I don't know what's going on there, but a pretty cool cover. But anyway, that one is another kind of cameo in continuity for Ahsoka. So I'd look for that one. That's one to look for. Me personally, I like the cover on Mace Windu #5, and that's the first full appearance of Ahsoka in Marvel continuity. That goes for about $200. It's a better cover. There's less of them in a 9.8 than this book, I think. I have to double check that. I think that there's less of that one than this one. And they're about the same price. So to me, I'd get the first full appearance versus the first cameo in Marvel continuity. But that's a pretty awesome cover, though. I'm not gonna lie. It's simple. It's Vader. It's a pretty iconic book. I could see that one being a long-term kind of iconic, modern classic type of book. So pick your poison on that one. But if you're into Ahsoka and you don't want to spend Clone Wars #1 money, this is not a bad choice either. Other than Mace Windu #5, this is probably your next best bet. One last one that I wanted to point out was this one. This is Dr. Aphra #11, and this kind of ties into what we just talked about with Marvel continuity. Dirge, the Bounty Hunter. We've talked about Dr. Aphra #11. This is the variant cover. There are only 3 of these in the 9.8. I really wanted to bid on this, but I'm just trying to not spend right now. But this is called the Hetrick Virgin Edition. It's kind of a weird cover though. It's Dirge covered in like weird alien slime. So I finally decided that the cover was ugly enough that I didn't want to bid on it, even though there's only 3 of these in a 9.8 on the census so far. It just came out in August of 2021, so I would imagine there'll be more to come. But this one sold for $71 and change, plus $11 shipping on 5 bids. That just closed on January 16th. But that's another kind of in continuity book to think about is Dirge. I don't know if he'll show up again in Ahsoka or Obi-Wan. Those are the 2 most likely series where he makes an appearance. But they're bringing him back for a reason, folks, right? There's got to be a reason why they're bringing Dirge back. Given that he's appeared in cameo in Dr. Aphra #10, and then in his first full appearance in Marvel continuity was Dr. Aphra #11. He's on the cover of the standard edition. There's one other variant edition where he's not on the cover. I think it's called the Pride edition. And then there's this one, the Hetrick Virgin edition, that is pretty tough to find so far. So I would just think about that one as a low cost kind of budget option under $100 if you want to kind of speculate on Dirge making live action appearance. I mean, it would be a really cool one, I think. So anyway, the dead cat bounce. Is it real? Am I crazy? Is the Book of Boba Fett not going to negatively affect comic book prices? Me personally, I think that after the Book of Boba Fett is come and gone 2 or 3 months from now, there's going to be a window pre-Ahsoka, pre-Obi-Wan, pre-Andor, pre-Mandalorian season 3, where there's going to be a window in there where Star Wars comics are going to be dead. They're going to be dead in price. Prices are going to come way back down, and I'm chomping at the bit for that time period. I think it's going to be kind of March, April, May timeframe. We're going to start seeing the prices start to come back down again. We'll see if I'm wrong or not, but let me know your thoughts if you agree or disagree. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back soon.